Greetings, Sanbonani, Dumelangi, Abosheni. Hello out there once again. It's your boy AK coming to you with another episode of the Real Talk with AK, the People's Podcast, as we are still on the path of seeking practical solutions for practical societal issues that members of society are facing on their daily basis. And joining me on this episode is Mr. Mufenyi-Muela, my co-host on the Political Talk. But then I'll actually let him bless us with the official introduction as we are welcoming him to the Real Talk with AK family, man. We're gonna be bringing you super content. Apart from that, Mr. Muela,
Mr. AK, sir.
The platform is yours, man.
No, greetings everyone to the viewers who are watching Real Talk with AK. I think this is the third time that I'm appearing, and since then I enjoy my time here. Anyway, Mufenyi-Muela, to those that don't know, still studying criminology. I think this is like the third time I've been still studying criminology, and I'm enjoying it very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here, sir. Thank you, everyone.
And welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. And my man, on this one, like as we're preparing, when we're busy doing the pre-prep, we decided that we'll be exploring some of the stereotypes surrounding COVID-19, the vaccines, and the issue of the digital certificates. So, my man, without like me wasting any more time, like I would actually like to find out from you, as we're just busy having like what are some of the stereotypes, or what do you think are some of the stereotypes that have to do with like COVID-19 in general, the stereotypes that members of society are portraying towards this pandemic?
The stereotypes have been very vast, and through time they've been evolving, if we can use that word, because oftentimes whenever you talk about a stereotype, you're talking about a general understanding that everybody has with regards to something, but it's their own understanding and not yours. So the philosophies tend to adapt in terms of, for example, let's look at, I'm sure you've been vaccinated before, right?
Yeah.
And you already know that when you arrive at a vaccination center, you have to register and all these things, and all this information is captured and so on and so forth, and then after that you can go and vaccinate. You also have to provide proof that you have vaccinated, and within that proof is a specific code that's completely identical to you and cannot be duplicated elsewhere.
More like an ID number.
More like an ID number, exactly. So it's yet to evolve. For example, the government has recently announced that they're going to create a website where you can actually download your vaccine certificate.
I think it's already up.
Yeah, it's already up, but it's still facing some glitches.
Yeah.
I've encountered a number of people, even elders and the youth itself. Whenever they want to download that particular thing, they encounter problems. But let's just simply say the stereotypes are vast in terms of the vaccine itself, the digital effect that it has to society. But in general, it also has to do with, should I say, census, population counting, stats and control and all these things. So people think that it has become this thing of population control. But that's a global context. But let's look at it in how much it affects us as South Africans in general. But yeah, I think in a general sense, it covers a lot more than what we think.
Yeah, because if you were to look at it, when this whole thing started, there were like a lot of theories surrounding COVID-19. From it being associated with like 5Gs.
Yeah.
Some were even mentioning Bill Gates. Yeah. I don't know like what Bill Gates had to do with everything, saying like, as we said, world population and everything. So my man, how do you think like these stereotypes are actually affecting us as a country at the moment? Do they have a positive effect or a negative effect on the country?
In most cases, it's more negative than positive.
Yeah.
And it's primarily because I guess we South Africans, oftentimes we do have our own unique style as a country and our unique culture as a country. But we are still trying to develop ourselves and trying to integrate into the larger society at hand or the world at hand. So the vaccine rollouts were extremely impacted. For an example, all these things that sufficed between population control and all these things and so on and so forth have caused a large hesitancy with regards to people actually taking the vaccine. And it has a large effect primarily because it evolves through time, and by the time we are trying to, the entire world is getting back to normal. For example, when you look at, if you're a soccer fan and you're watching EPL and other European football associations and leagues and all these things, you start to realize that fans are already within the stadiums and they're watching.
And it's been months.
And
now.
It's been months.
For us, it's only starting right now, if I'm not mistaken. It started with the match for Ethiopia.
Exactly, which is the South Africa versus Ethiopia match.
Yeah.
And it should I say, it's affecting our entire norm at hand. We are hesitant, we want to go back to normal, but we are hesitant in terms of taking these steps and moving
But do you think like going back to normal is possible?
No, for the mere fact that we've actually adopted this thing of wearing masks, social distancing, being cautious, sanitizing and all these things, it has affected our definition of normal right now.
Yeah.
And it's yet to affect us in the long run. I won't lie, it's yet to affect us in the long run. But it should I say, and I think the negative thing about COVID is that it changed our entire dynamic of living as a society. However, it has also opened up a lot of loopholes that have occurred within, again, I'm not saying the world at large, but the country ourselves.
Do you mind sharing some of these loopholes with like the members of our community and the viewers out there?
And this is based on my experience.
Yeah.
Again, it's something that I've created a hunch in with regards to. For an example, why do we have to have proof of vaccination? It's the same
question. I think that's the question that's been trending.
Look at it this way. Back in the days, our parents and our grandparents had to walk around with this thing called, in the apartheid era, a dom pass. A dom pass. So we are slightly moving to that particular direction, but with a less restricted manner.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to come and interrogate you and asking you where's your dom pass and why are you walking in these areas.
It's more like they are using the things you need. That's why they treat you, for instance, no vaccine, no entry. Such things.
Exactly. For example, even now, within the South Africa versus Ethiopia match, they say those who are fully vaccinated. It does not say those who are vaccinated. Those who are fully vaccinated. That means if you took a vaccine that requires 2 doses, then you can go and enter in for free. They're encouraging people to actually do that.
Yeah.
But on a more political side, it is affecting us in terms of the identity at large.
Yeah.
Let's look at the number. South Africa has been facing a lot of identity fraud and identity crisis at large.
And getting married to people they don't even know.
Exactly. And now it is affecting these people. Imagine someone walking into a vaccination site. Let's just start there. Let's not even try to complicate things. Someone who's walking into a vaccination site with either an ID, a passport, or an asylum, produces those things and saying that they haven't registered, and they are registered on site. And then that particular person finds out as they're being registered that they've already vaccinated. And the system does not capture you according to your name, it captures you according to your identity.
Yeah, ID number.
Your ID number.
Yeah.
And in so doing, then you realize that this person used an alias, the name is different, the number is the same, and the cell phone numbers are, should I say, if they're not the same, they're different. because you need a cell phone number whenever you register in order for crucial information to be captured within that particular system. Like what you call this, if you go to Google and you download and you type the words EVDS registration, it leads you straight to the vaccination site in terms of registration. So the EVDS number is a specific code that's should I say, the same as an ID number. Yeah. But then it certifies in saying that this particular code is already captured within our system. Yeah, this particular person is already vaccinated. But now, with the moment identity theft and all these things start to occur, then it's easy for them to trace. Now, the loopholes that start to suffice are things like, why doesn't Home Affairs have its own law enforcement agencies and all these things? So it makes you wonder and question, why do we still have such a big loophole in a very critical area in our country? Because it is creating we all know that South Africa has been facing a lot of xenophobic attacks and a lot of xenophobic ignitions and all these things.
Even COVID actually put some fuel to the fire.
Exactly.
It actually contributed, because I recall earlier on this, I think we're still around level 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. I saw a poster where like South Africans were, let me just say, there were like a few South Africans who were decided that they were going to embark on a clean-up strike, a march where they were going to be closing foreign-owned businesses. So they were calling on all South Africans to take part in that shutdown. But unfortunately, it just became something that happened in like those
particular areas where it was mobilized to begin with. Yes.
And like this leads me to, while we are still on the issue of Home Affairs and foreign nationals, this leads me to the issue of like foreign nationals who are in the country illegal at the moment, because like everyone, according to like the law or the instruction that was handed out by the government, everyone is supposed to be vaccinated. So what's gonna happen to those people who are in the country illegally, people who don't have IDs? Are we going to leave them off behind, or is there a way that can be used to actually accommodate them too?
But now here's the thing. The moment you mention identity theft, you have to go straight to Home Affairs. Yeah. The moment you mention vaccinations and IDs and passports and everything, you go back straight to Home Affairs. And this thing, should I say that the strategic approach, and this is just my theory, is narrowing down the illegal influx of people who are not citizens in the country, or people who are here illegally. It narrows down the number so that these areas can be focused on, and primarily because it allows us to actually check how many people are South Africans, how many people have actually taken up citizenship as South Africans, and so on and so forth. I remember interacting with someone once upon a time, and this person was someone who was involved in checking out IDs and all these things and so forth.
Yeah.
If you look at, especially the Green Book, the traditional Green Book ID, where there are people who have been watching these things and tried to develop these things, he told me that South Africans, whenever you look at a South African ID number, it always ends with a 0, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4 going up, and it starts from 0, right? And he said, right beneath that particular ID, there's a part where it actually states your meanings. Now, apart from the meanings, your place of birth.
Yeah.
So people who take citizenship, their place of birth is indicated within the ID. The number does not start. The number does not start with 0. The number starts with 1.
I think it's 6.
1, 2, or 6 going up, and it depends on the country of the person's origin, it seems. So we're trying to monitor these things, but now the problem is that by monitoring these things, we are not taking decisive action. That's why we go back to this thing of, why doesn't our Department of Home Affairs have its own law enforcement agency or system whereby they specifically focus on these particular things. Yeah.
Because I honestly speaking, that one is an issue. It's actually killing a lot of citizens. Because when maybe we load a loan, for instance, now I'm going to the bank to apply for a loan, they tell you that you are blacklisted.
Exactly.
But you have never even applied for a loan in your life.
Exactly.
So those are some of the things that our government actually needs to rectify. Like Home Affairs is a mess, and like you said, this whole digital certificate thing is actually going to help them in identifying or bringing those perpetrators to justice, because no agere, it goes with that certain code that actually identifies them. Oh, this is what's up.
Exactly.
So my man, let's move on. So like, I think you have realized that when it came to the vaccines, and I think it's still happening right now, we actually have two groups, the vaccinated group and the unvaccinated group. And right now this thing, I feel like it's slowly but surely growing into like a war, because those who are not vaccinated are actually fighting those who are vaccinated in most cases. So I would actually like to find out from you, Kore, like, what are some of the stereotypes that we have seen along both Twitter, both Facebook, like our social media platforms? What are some of the stereotypes surrounding this whole thing of the vaccines? Because some are saying get the microchip, and then those 5G guys, some are saying they want to kill them after taking the vaccine, you're going to die. So like, what do you actually believe in these stereotypes?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't, and that's because I've had close encounters with such conversations with people in general. And here's the stereotypes that came with the fact of vaccines, which is, for example, if you take the vaccine, you have to make sure that you are well and healthy. It starts when people actually start taking the vaccine when they're still ill, when they still have COVID symptoms or other related chronic illnesses that are not well stabilized. And as a result, whenever they do take the vaccine, it causes complications. And now the unvaccinated group and the vaccinated group, or even if we can call them factions.
Yeah, it's factions.
Yeah, they start making us question a number of things. And one of these things could be, to those who are not vaccinated, look at it this way. Your access, the government is being subtle about the matter. I remember someone posting on their WhatsApp status that the president was constantly saying that nobody is forced to take the vaccine. Nobody is forced to do this. Nobody's forced to do it. It is not mandatory. And all these things. But other institutions are already creating a mandatory system whereby it says if you're not vaccinated, you're barred from entry.
I think one of them, I read an article, I think it's 2 weeks back or a week ago, if I'm not mistaken, by Discovery, where like they actually found a loophole with regards to this. So basically, what they can do is terminate your employment contract for not honoring it, because the contract right now, it actually states that vaccines are supposed to be mandatory.
Yes.
So if you are not vaccinated, they won't be making space for you. You are being fired for not honoring the contract.
Exactly.
So I was like, okay, this is smart. They said these things are not mandatory, but how they went about it?
But the question is, they were not mandatory to who? Let's be specific. They are not mandatory to who?
Yeah.
The general public, or the actual businesses that are practicing their own businesses and styles in South Africa. Let's be honest here. If you take saying the mandate is delivered specifically to the public to say it is not mandatory.
Yeah.
But we all know that a specific country is responsible for the laws that they produce to businesses that are, or business owners that practice business within our country and its own. And the question becomes, for example, right now, there are people out there, if you start talking to them whenever they go to vaccination sites, just take your time and just go to vaccination sites and be like, why do you vaccinate?
It's because of stadium or sebenza.
Yes. It's mostly employment. And now, we as the youth were basically caught out. We were like, oh, so you guys are reluctant in actually vaccinating. It's okay.
Because I even saw, even universities are actually started following this initiative.
The University of the Free State is an example of that.
Even at UJ, because the last time I received an email from them, they were actually talking about it, that they are considering making vaccines mandatory. And that was after the University of Free State announced that vaccines were going to be mandatory for the academic year of 2020.
Yes.
And like, it made me realize, that's where they got us. When you think of it.
Even unemployment. Yeah. Right now the government is just being subtle about it, as I said. But let's look at it this way. In the news, a number of things have popped up. Like, for an example, the staff spokesperson mentioned that there is a backlog of 14,000 police officers that were supposed to be employed but couldn't be employed because of COVID and budget cuts.
Yeah.
What are the odds that if you actually wanted to apply for SAPS, you'd have to be fully vaccinated in order for your application to be considered?
At the moment, it's
you understand what I'm saying? So this thing, it's becoming larger and larger, and it's spreading wider and wider, and because the government knew that the reluctance within the youth of vaccinated is extremely large, let's catch them where they actually need something the most, and which is bread on the table. If you don't get bread...
Because I even recall there was once a trend where I think they proposed it, where they were like, no vaccine, no alcohol, apparently. Yeah. But apparently, alcohol traders were like, nah, we can't do that, because majority of the citizens, they are against taking this vaccine, so they were going to be losing income.
Yes.
So this leads me to the next question, and it's still with regards to this thing of vaccines. So, like, apart from using the initiative that the government is currently using, or the strategy that they are using, and that is like no vaccine, no entry, digital certificate, which other strategies do you think can actually be used to encourage those members of society who are still against taking these vaccines?
I won't lie, it's education.
Yeah.
I won't lie, it is education. I think the number of problems that sufficed within, let's not look at the global scale, let's look at the cases that arise in South Africa alone.
Yeah.
The social media has opened the world so big and so wide that we had to look at things of how vaccines are affecting the entire world, but instead of actually looking at patterns and statistics that affect us in our country. Because you might find that your immune strength as a South African could be completely stronger than someone who's in Europe. Yeah. And people who succumb in Europe are primarily because of their immunity is probably weakened to whatever practices and conducts it is that they practice. So, in a general sense, it starts to make us wonder about a number of things. One in particular is, let's look at the stats of the number of people that died in South Africa due to COVID.
Yeah.
And the number of people that died from COVID vaccination complications. Is the number extremely high, or is it extremely low? People are not doing research. They are concluding things from speculation and the information that is provided at a specific country. Because you might find that the way it's actually manufactured here, it could be completely different to how it's manufactured in other places. For example, here in the Eastern Cape in Gqeberha, we can actually manufacture our own J&J vaccine. And we are even given the go-ahead to try and improve this vaccine as much as we can.
The COVID-19 variants are also
they're mutating at a specific rate. So it makes you wonder, because people are now looking at things and saying that how much is it affecting us in a global sense?
Yeah.
How much is it affecting us in a domestic sense? And all these things. All these mutate, like more Delta, all these variants that come into play, they made this vaccine focus specifically on reducing severity. But the other problem is that we are not also taking responsibility as South Africans when it comes to vaccinations, and as well as how we conduct ourselves publicly.
And just to add on what you're saying, I think like most citizens forget that just because you are vaccinated, it does not mean that you're supposed to stop wearing your mask.
Yeah.
Being vaccinated does not mean that you are immune to contracting COVID-19. You can still get it and go. So please do follow those regulations that were put in place by the World Health Organizations. My man, as you were saying, sorry for jumping you.
No, it's not a problem. Because we can joke all we want and probably tell people in the city, I'm banning your tata a vaccine instead of a vaccine and all these things. But in general, I think people are not as educated as they're supposed to be with regards to
this whole thing.
Exactly. For example, you went to go and vaccinate, right? And they ask you a number of questions prior to you actually vaccinating, which is, are you showing signs of COVID? Are you having a cough, sore throat, headache, and all these things, and so on and so forth. And then as you go to the next nurse to go and consult prior to actually taking the jab, and then ask you, have you taken any flu vaccines? Are you on chronic medication and all these things?
I think Mr. NKOSI was a victim of that.
Yeah.
Because when he went there, he had flu on that day. He had flu.
And they were like, okay, so how long have you had flu? Because people are already starting to...
You should have seen him. Because he had to form up a story on spot like, no, I drank coffee with a lot of sugar.
Because and why is that? It is because people are actually trying to avoid this thing of a case that Mr. NKOSI took the jab and he died, but without them actually digging in deep on what was wrong with Mr. NKOSI prior to him taking the vaccine. For example, I didn't know, but women who are below 14 weeks pregnant are not allowed to take the vaccine.
Oh.
And
but it makes sense.
They'll ask you, are you pregnant? You're like, yes. How far are you in terms of your pregnancy? If you're below 14 weeks, let's say, then we cannot vaccinate you now. You'll have to come back later, then we'll vaccinate you.
It makes sense.
You understand? For example, there are women who tend to inquire and saying that, what if I breastfeed? I'll be like, no, it's okay if you breastfeed and all these things and so on and so forth, as long as you're okay. So the biggest gamble comes from people who actually have chronic illnesses. Yeah. Like, for example, a person who has hypertension or high blood. Yes. They have to go and get and check the hypertension, whatever chronic level it is whether it is stable or what. And if it is not, then they cannot vaccinate. So these are the things that people are supposed to be educated on with regards, and national television is the actual platform where people can actually be educated on, but it is not happening.
And you know the other fact that's actually contributing to this thing, it's because most with our race, the black population, in most cases, majority of us don't even know when we are sick.
Exactly.
Yeah, I might be sick now, but because visiting doctors, it might be expensive, costly. I don't have time to go queue at public hospitals. I just choose to stay, and you don't even realize you are sick. And then you go and take that vaccine thinking that, okay, you are healthy.
Yeah.
And then after that, complications arise, and then leading to death. Because I actually feel like that's what happened with like most of the deaths that were in relation to this. Like, as we had people when the vaccines were being introduced saying, my grandmother passed away after taking this vaccine. Yeah. And in most cases, it's mostly rural areas. because access to these facilities, medical facilities,
it's rare. It's rare for them. And you start to wonder, for example, when you start mentioning that black people actually don't know as to whether they are sick or not. I remember this one time when there was a Vuma weekend within the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Where they were encouraging people to vaccinate on that entire weekend. And there was this one man who's actually working at health promotion in the district. And he was like, Mofenyi, have you noticed that women are vaccinating more than men? I'm like, yeah, I've noticed that every time we do stats. And he's like, well, have you noticed that because women vaccinate more than men actually are afraid of taking the jab? They think where the needle is actually a screwdriver because of maybe the class.
I was also part of them, but for me it's just a phobia.
Yeah.
Because I still recall when we're still like procrastinating.
Yeah.
With like going and taking the vaccine. I told Magic that I never failed. I don't mind taking the vaccine, but my issue is the thought of the needle going through my flesh. But when I got there, it was even fast. Like, did not even realize that they were done.
Because you're expecting a lightning to strike your hand, when in essence all you're just taking is a vaccine.
I think this was a result of how the COVID-19 tests were conducted. If you recall, you saw that thing when it was
the long swipe testing.
I'm part of the few people who never tested for COVID-19, man.
Everyone was afraid of testing because of that swipe. Everyone was afraid of testing because of that swipe. And you often wonder that. For example, when he said that men are actually more reluctant to take the jab, is primarily because men do not go for consultation the way women do. And that is affecting us at a large scale. Because as a man, men are afraid of finding out a number of things, but I think in a general sense, men are afraid of finding out if their reproduction systems and things that are taken in place would be affected.
Do you still recall that guy who was like, I think it was the girlfriend on Twitter. It was like, my man went to take the vaccine.
Yeah.
And after that, this 4-5 was no longer going up. My man, I was laughing. I was like, you see now, people are blaming the vaccine for their bedroom reasons now.
Even the president was like, the reason why men are no longer is because I saw Malento. He was ridiculing primarily because our stereotypes are evolving so much so that it brings out the humor in a number of things, and it is all because of the people who laugh are people who have vaccinated. It is not people who haven't vaccinated. It is people who actually vaccinated. So it makes you laugh at a number of reasons as to why these things are actually occurring. Yeah. So in essence, I think it's that particular thing. You understand? Yeah.
Because I still recall, like, as you're still saying that, like, in most cases, for us it's humor. We find humor in such things. Because for me it was when COVID was still like arriving, like that. You still remember those post-35Gs and everything where community members by KZN went and banned, I think it was Vodacom Towers. They were like this literally like
5G,
But these things have been there for 15 years. And it also goes back to your netabadi vaccines. But we've been taking vaccines from the moment you are born.
Flu vaccines.
Measles shots.
And now it makes you wonder. About a number of things. Like, for example, let's ask one particular thing, which is on the issue of vaccines. Why are the talks of 5G all of a sudden quiet? Why have they simmered down? Were we actually part of a, should I say, economical sabotage of a specific company that has been establishing 5Gs for quite some time? Because even the 5G talks has developed from security reasons from between the US and China and all these things, all of a sudden microchips that are... You understand what I mean?
I was even making a joke after taking this vaccine to Tapel. I'm like, my man, let me can live 5G.
Even Ryan Reynolds said
it was like I just took the 5G. I still remember the post.
And And you're picturing him with that Deadpool voice. So, but yeah, in general sense, this vaccine thing and the digital thing, whether we like it or not, everyone is going to take the jab.
So, Babel, like, I feel like we are running out of time, and our hour is about to run out.
Yeah.
But before we actually concluded everything, and let me just go back to the issue of vaccines with regards to the types of vaccines that are currently there. As you mentioned, Johnson & Johnson. The other one is Pfizer. I don't know if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's Pfizer.
Yeah. So, like, I would actually like to find out, what's the difference between these two vaccines, especially from someone who's actually at the front line of this whole thing, like, who's actually there, like, you actually engage with, like, the professionals who are in this industry. So, like,
and I actually learned this thing from a nurse, which is pretty simple. She said both of these things do the same thing. They do the same function. Whether it's a cap or a sun hat, it's something that prevents you from the sun, right? So these vaccines are the same. Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson are just company names of these vaccines. Now, she mentioned that a lot of people are going for J&J because they're thinking that J&J is more, should I say, impactful in terms of preventing from the vaccine and so on and so forth. And Pfizer is the weaker version of that, which is not true. She mentioned something that I didn't actually do a research on until she actually mentioned that, which is coverage. She said that, remember, J&J at some point was retracted, right? And it's primarily because of the hearsays with regards to blood clots that it was creating to people and so on and so forth. So they had to retract, re-examine the vaccine before redistributing it if it was redistributable, if that is the word that we can use. And so she mentioned coverage. She asked me, she was like, do you know how much J&J covers you or covers your immunity with regards to COVID? I'm like, coverage? I'm like, I have no idea. She's like, okay, let me explain. She's like, J&J covers, if I'm not mistaken, 87% with regards to the vaccine. If I'm not mistaken, also there are talks that it could potentially have a booster shot.
Yeah, because I saw, I think it's at the US, they have filed for like to have a booster shot. I think they've already started with the process of like approving it and everything.
And why is that? Vaccines are like cars, they depreciate. The longer they are within the body, the more they actually depreciate within the body. And so the booster shot is basically to return the coverage of that particular vaccine to the actual capacity that it's supposed to be in.
It goes back to the point my sister made with regards to what you're saying, like where she was like, you know, right now, one thing you should actually take into consideration is the fact that these vaccines, we are going to be taking them regularly or daily. One of those is going to be something that's going to be required for each and everyone.
Exactly.
So this is where the digital certificates
come into play,
because they are going to help them keep track of
the number of people that have actually vaccinated and the
number of times.
Exactly. So, for an example, the booster shot in general picks everything up. Pfizer, on the other hand, covers, if I'm not mistaken, around 93. Okay. With regards to the Pfizer vaccine, it has, if I'm not mistaken, around 93% coverage. And the 93 has to cover 2 doses. It is not a booster. People think that the second dose is a booster shot. It is not a booster shot. It is the actual dose, the way it is supposed to be. Like, for an example, when you drink paracetamol or anything that is pain related, better take 2. They're not saying for to take 1 and then take 1, the other one later. It says take 2 for that specific thing. So it tends to happen in that particular format. So the Pfizer vaccine also covers that particular thing, which is 19. So now the question becomes, by the time the Pfizer vaccine starts to depreciate within the body, even if it has a booster or has to be boosted, it has a lot more coverage than the Johnson & Johnson thing. So some nurses would actually talk about terms of, is it 3.2, 3.4, 3.5, and that the other one is to restore, when we dose you the second time, we are restoring it to 0.6 or 0.4 and so on and so forth. So these are the basic things that are happening amongst the vaccines in general that differ between these two things according to my understanding.
And I hear you. I think also the real talkers out there, they are listening, because I was also one of those few people who was like, not sure what's the difference between these two, because let me just share one of the theories me and my sister had. It goes with like your linear dosing.
Yes.
Because but you just highlighted it right now, you see it now. So but it was more like your idea for it, like, okay, the first dosage you find maybe, although it's not that powerful, hardly E1, it's not that effective. But for it to work, about that second booster for it's a sponsor. And with like the Johnson & Johnson, it's one shot, I think it covers for the whole year. That's the theory we had, me and my sister, we were just talking like, okay. But apart from that, my man, I think we have reached the conclusion point of our episode. And this is the main show, by the way, because I think the real talkers out there might be confused, as I said, that he's my co-host for the political talk, hey, and it's gonna be every Wednesday on YouTube. So do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and while you are on it, please help us to make great podcasts, and also connect with all the real talkers community out there, like worldwide, and by becoming a member of the real talkers community, you are going to get exclusive content and merchandise. You can just do so by visiting patreon.com/realtalkwithakay. More details are available there. And please don't also forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we also have a blog. So you can just go check it out on realtalkwithakay.wordpress.com. And for the blog, that's where we cover like our weekly news from current trends and current affairs. But apart from that, let's just hit the summary of the show and then sign out, my man. So I'll first start by giving you the platform.
In conclusion and in a nutshell, all I wish to say is this. There are a lot of things that we need to fix in our country. And COVID-19 has actually opened these cracks, so much so that we do not have to fill the crack, but demolish and rebuild. The Home Affairs issue is just one issue that is raised. So on the political talk, that we will start to cover all these things and so on and so forth as to why this, why that, why not this, why not that. But whether we like it or not, South Africans, the government is being subtle about it, but everyone at some point is going to have to vaccinate whether they like it or not. So I just encourage you, for the sake of being safe, you and your family members around there, and the people next to you, just go and get the jab. If we die, we die. But if not, we stand to live another year or two or even 10. But I do encourage people to just take the jab. So far, we haven't heard any cases of people taking the jab and dying. So for now, let's just take the jab, and then we'll see what happens.
Because, I think it's true when they say, even if it's not for you, but you should actually think of the people around you.
Yeah.
For instance. So when you might not be interested in taking the vaccine and you have your own reasons, but at least consider the people around you. For instance, they are kids at home, and kids at the moment, they are not taking vaccines, which is they are actually much more likely to to contract COVID-19. But apart from that, we are signing out from us. It's your boy AK signing out Fabricatio with a bang. Dayando.